Wow, I haven't been on camera in a while. How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jason. I'll be your host on this CFL talk show, Hussey's Huddle. In this video, I give my full CFL predictions, including the regular season standings, including as well the award predictions, and if you watch my roster review series, the nominees for all the awards. I basically compile that and choose one winner out of those players, and then finally my Grey Cup playoffs predictions. I'm just really excited to get into today's video, but really quickly, I just wanted to thank everyone for their support on the roster review series. Got a lot of great feedback. I'm glad so many people enjoyed it. I had a really fun time making it, and even though it was a grind, it was just a lot of fun to talk about all the players in the league and do something more comprehensive at the CFL level. So thank you everybody for supporting me in that. And before we get started, if you want to support the show, the best way to do it is by hitting that like button and subscribing to Hussey's Huddle for more CFL content just like this. I appreciate it. And with that said, let's get started today's video. So, before we get started, this season is obviously insanely unpredictable, given the fact that we haven't seen these guys play in 2 years. A lot of these players are older players, and the fact that in the CFL in a regular year, there are usually a lot of breakout players that are really anonymous to everybody that come onto the scene during the season, and I think we're going to see even more of that this season. So, keep that in mind as you go through these predictions, but it's not fun to not do predictions, so I'm going to be throwing out my predictions based on what I think of these teams going into this season, at least on paper. So we'll start with the East Division, going from the top to bottom, and in first place in the East Division this season, I have, no surprise, the Hamilton Tiger Cats going in with a 10-4 record. Not a crazy record like some people are predicting. I've seen some people say that they're going to go 14-0, and I think that's just ridiculous. In this league, it's very hard to compile a great record because you play the same teams multiple times. So, for example, Hamilton plays Toronto 4 times, which, just beating the same team 3 times is a challenge, even twice, let alone 4 times. So, I think Hamilton is going to have a slightly worse record than they did, at least winning percentage-wise, in the 2019 season. But I do think they're going to finish first in the East quite comfortably. I think they just have the best roster. They're the more well-rounded team out of all of the teams in the division. And I think as long as they get competent quarterback play, which I'm very confident in with the 2 quality guys that they have back there in Evans and Mazzoli, I think they're going to have a great season this year and be in the Grey Cup conversation once again. Now, at the second spot in the East is where it gets interesting. I'm going to go with the Montreal Alouettes, finishing with a 6-8 record. This is where they finished in the 2019 season, where they were kind of a surprise team. And the 6-8 record may seem a bit low, but this is because I actually went through and predicted all the games of the season to make accurate record predictions. I'm not just going to throw out a bunch of records, and the math's not going to add up about the records, and not every team can finish 8-7 or whatever. So I have them finishing 6-8, but that is going to be good enough in my predictions to get to the second place in the East, where they'll host a playoff game. And I just really have a lot of confidence in Vernon Adams, and I think Armando Sewell is a really good addition on that defensive line. It's going to give them a little bit more of a pass rush presence, and that's going to be enough to make the playoffs this season. I don't know how far it's going to take them, but I do see them making the playoffs, and I think having 4 games against Ottawa really helps. I have them winning 3 of those 4 games, so that is why Montreal is going to finish second. And then in third place, I have the Toronto Argonauts, also with a 6-8 record. Toronto is a team I think is going to get better as the season goes along. I think we have a lot of new players in the fold here for Toronto, so I think as the season goes on, they're going to have a period where they have to incorporate all these guys. They may struggle out of the gate, but I think by the end of the season, they'll be one of the better units in the CFL. And I think that the Argos finished with a 6-8 record. They fall below Montreal on a tiebreaker based on divisional record. I actually went through and got all the tiebreakers right too, but I won't tell you if they made the playoffs yet. We'll talk about that when we talk about the West Division. And then finally, in 4th place, I have the Ottawa Red Blacks. I just don't see a ton of hope for the Red Blacks this season. I have them finishing with a 4-10 record, which is not the most doomsday prediction that you're seeing out there. I think a lot of people are actually predicting them to only win like 2 games. So I have them winning 4. I think they'll surprise a couple teams this year. With Paul LaPolice, I think he's a really good coach. I think really highly of him. But I just don't think this roster is very talented right now. I think that there's a lot of inexperience. And counting on that many rookies to step up this year, even in a year where I think there's going to be a lot of rookies, like I said, break out, I don't think you can really rely on that. And that's why I have Ottawa at 4th in the East. And I don't think it's really controversial to say that. I just don't think they're all that talented of a team. But I do think this defense is going to be pretty good, and that's going to be able to steal them some games. And I think there's going to be some creative coaching on offense that allows them to upset a few teams here or there. Now moving on to the West Division picks here. In 1st place, I have the Winnipeg Blue Bombers finishing with a 9-5 record. And I just don't see many flaws with this team. I think they're just a very well-coached team by Mike O'Shea. Just runs a very tight ship. They have difference makers on both sides of the ball. They have maybe not the greatest quarterback in Zach Collaros, but he's good enough to get the job done if he stays healthy, which is the main concern for this team. But that's a lot of teams this year. But I think that, there's just such a floor for this team that I don't see them missing the playoffs at all. And in this projection, I actually have them finishing 1st in the West this season. Unlike they did in 2019, they finished 3rd, and they were able to win a couple road games and go on to the Grey Cup. So I have a lot of confidence in Winnipeg going into this season. And then moving on to number 2, I have the Edmonton Elks. And I'm just really high on this Elks team. You would know if you watched the roster review I did of the team. I'm just confident in this offense's ability to put up points this season. I just think they're one of the best offenses on paper in the CFL. And I think Trevor Harris, he's a guy that has had great seasons in the past, but I think this is the year it really all comes together for him. He is going to be the focal point of the offense. He gets his offensive coordinator coming over from Ottawa, and Jamie Elizondo is the new head coach here. And even though he's kind of controversial with all these veteran cuts here, I think that he's actually going to help Harris a lot on the on-field stuff. Be much better than Jason Moss was in 2019 for him. And I think he's going to have a great season. And I think that combined with this great receiving core and some really good difference makers on the defensive line, I just have so much confidence in Edmonton going into this year. I have them finishing with a 9-5 record, losing out on that 1st place spot due to a tiebreaker with Winnipeg, but I think they're going to have a great season this year. And now moving on to number 3, I went back and forth with this all day, but ultimately I decided to give the 3rd place to the Calgary Stampeders with an 8-6 record. The reason why I have them here is because of, 1, the quarterback play. I still think Bo Levi Mitchell is the best quarterback in the CFL. And then 2, I think this is also the best run organization in the CFL. It's really hard to go against them. I think they haven't missed the playoffs in like 13, 14 years or something like that. I mean, it may be a pandemic that stops that, but at the same time, I still have so much faith for this team. They're just so consistent year after year. I think organizationally, head coach, GM, they just have really good cohesiveness there. And then I think they have enough talent elsewhere on the roster that they can step up and get them into the playoffs this season. I don't think they're necessarily a favorite to win the Grey Cup or anything, but I think they're absolutely going to make the playoffs, and I really couldn't predict them to miss it this year. And then moving on to number 4, I have the Saskatchewan Roughriders finishing with a 6-8 record. And this is where I'm going to get some disagreements on this video, but the reason I have this is because of a couple things. So, first of all, when I made that Rough Riders review, I predicted them to make the playoffs pretty comfortably. But the thing is, that was recorded just before all those Achilles injuries, once to Larry Dean, Freddie Bishop, 2 really key guys that were projected to be starters for this team this year. And then another thing is that they just announced the other day, or it leaked out, that Brett Boyko is going to be the starter at right tackle for this team. Are you kidding me? This guy was probably the worst tackle in the CFL in 2019, and I just don't have a lot of faith in them building around that. And I'm just pretty perplexed by that. I think they're going to have some offensive line issues throughout this year. They don't have a lot of depth. I think they're just one injury away on that offensive line from being in real trouble. And I think you could argue that they are in real trouble by starting Brett Boyko at right tackle in the first place. So that's why I have them ranked 4th in the CFL West this season. But I still think really highly of Cody Fajardo. This doesn't take away anything from him. I think he's still going to have a great season. And I really do like Shaq Evans as well. I just have a lot of questions now about their ability to create pass rush off the edge, their ability to cover in the middle of the field with Larry Dean out, and then also, obviously, protecting the quarterback on the offensive line. So those are my questions with the Rough Riders. I could be wrong, but that's honestly just my feel. They're a team that I went back and forth. I'm like, do I put them in the playoffs? Do I not? It was really hard this year, but ultimately, I decided to put them at 4th. And at number 5, finally, I'm going to go with the BC Lions, finishing with a 5-9 record. I think they're just still clearly behind all the other teams here. I think they've improved a lot in terms of their skill positions and their defensive back room, but I don't think they're necessarily a very strong team in the trenches still. I think they still have a lot of problems here. I think Riker Matthews makes a difference at right tackle, but I think the beef of that offensive line right up the middle, they're going to struggle. The defensive line has basically no CFL experience, and the linebacking core has issues as well. And I still don't think they're going to make a big jump this year, even though I think Michael Riley is still a great quarterback. And I think all of these teams have the potential to prove me wrong. I think they all have those high-level players that can really swing games. So that is my predictions for the West Division. And as a result of my predictions here, there's not going to be a crossover this year in the CFL. So Toronto gets the last playoff spot in the East. Saskatchewan misses the playoffs. So it's Saskatchewan, BC, and Ottawa that miss out in the playoffs in this prediction. So we'll take a break from the season predictions and now go on to my award predictions for this year. So for most outstanding player, I have my nominees from the East Division, which is Vernon Adams, and my nominee from the West Division, Trevor Harris. It was really tough to decide between these two guys, but I think because of Trevor Harris's arsenal of weapons that he has around him, combined with the fact that his team, I see having a better record than Adams, I have Trevor Harris winning the CFL's Most Outstanding Player Award in 2021. I think it's well overdue. I think he's one of the most efficient quarterbacks we've seen in recent years, and I think it's all going to come together for him this season. Now moving on to Most Outstanding Defensive Player, my nominees are Adam Bighill of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and Ja'Garrett Davis of the Hamilton Tiger Cats. And trying to choose between these back and forth all day, but I'm going with Adam Bighill of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. I think he's going to lead the league in tackles this year. I think he's going to be really just a revelation after that time off, and he didn't really get to have his moment of glory too much in 2019. He missed a few games and wasn't his best self during that entire season. So I think that he's going to have a big bounce back this year, and I have a lot of faith in him doing so. And I think Davis as well is going to have a great season for the Tiger Cats. I think he has the potential to lead the league in sacks. So we'll see what happens here. I'm really excited to see who wins Defensive Player of the Year this season. Now moving on to my nominees for the Most Outstanding Canadian Award, I'm going with Hergy Mayala, wide receiver, Calgary Stampeders, and Cameron Judge, linebacker for the Toronto Argonauts. And this is kind of my hottest take of this video, I think, at least in terms of this award section. I am going with Hergy Mayala, the second-year player, to win Most Outstanding Canadian in the CFL this season. I think he's going to be the biggest breakout star of the league this year. I think they're really going to rely on him in that Calgary receiving core that doesn't have a lot of CFL experience, but you saw near the end of that 2019 season that this guy had so much potential. You just don't see a lot of Canadian guys coming up in the draft that have that athletic ability, that size, speed element, and Mayala just has so much potential, and he ended up really winning over Bo Levi Mitchell near the end of that 2019 season, and I think he's really going to continue that. Now with Eric Rogers out of the picture moving on to Toronto, I think he's going to take on a much bigger role in this offense, and he's going to be a 1,000-yard receiver this year. It depends on, obviously with a 14-game schedule, I don't know if he's ever going to reach that 1,000-yard goal, but I think he's going to win Most Outstanding Canadian this year. I think he's going to score a bunch of touchdowns, and I just have a lot of faith in him doing so. I chose him over a guy like Kwaku Boateng, who I think is still going to have a great season with Edmonton this year, but I think Mayala is going to be a breakout star this year, and I have very much confidence picking him to win Most Outstanding Canadian in the league this season. Now, moving on to my Most Outstanding Offensive Lineman nominees. In the East Division, I have Brandon Revenberg of the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and in the West Division, who else but Stanley Bryan of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And the winner of this award, I see being Brandon Revenberg of the Hamilton Tiger Cats. You could go with Bryan as well. It's a perfectly good choice, but I'm going with Revenberg, who I think is the best guard in the CFL today. I just have so much faith in Revenberg, still a young player, already such a great player to have a great season this year, and he's going to be on a great team, which always helps to winning these awards. So that is my prediction for Most Outstanding Offensive Lineman. And with that in mind, let's get into my Grey Cup playoff predictions. So the bracket is going to look like this. Montreal is going to play Toronto in the East semifinals with Hamilton getting the bye. And then on the West Division, it's going to be Calgary visiting Edmonton with Winnipeg getting the bye. So starting in the East, I have the Toronto Argonauts beating the Montreal Alouettes on the road in this East semifinal to advance to play the Hamilton Tiger Cats in the East Final. I just think this Toronto team is going to get better as the season goes along. Like I said, I think with the amount of moving pieces that they have, they're not going to be great right out of the gate, but they're going to be really good down the stretch this year once they get the legs underneath them. And I think that's going to include beating a Montreal team, which I think Toronto has a much better roster overall than Montreal, as long as they can get that quarterback situation sorted out with Toronto. That's really the one area where I favor Montreal a lot, but I'm going with Toronto to beat Montreal. And then in the West semifinal, I have Edmonton beating Calgary. This has kind of been a nemesis for Trevor Harris. He always loses to Calgary, but I think he's going to get home field advantage in this scenario, and I think this is really going to be his dream season this year, and they're going to be able to win this game and finally slay the beast that is the Calgary Stampeders. And that sets up an East Final of Toronto versus Hamilton, and in this, I'm going with Hamilton to win this game. I actually considered going with Toronto here. I think, like I said, I think Toronto is going to be a really hot team going down the stretch, and Hamilton's not necessarily known for being the most consistent playoff team in the world, but I think Hamilton, when they've been at home, they're really hard to beat, and I think with the playmakers that they have, they're just a more explosive team overall than Toronto is, and they're going to get it done and get on to the Grey Cup game once again. And then moving on to the West Final here, I have Edmonton upsetting Winnipeg. Like I said, I think this team in Edmonton is a bit of a team of destiny this year. I think there's just so much potential with this roster on paper, and I just have a lot of faith in their ability to do so this year with the amount of playmakers that they have around Trevor Harris. And, you know, they do have a really good rotation on the defensive line. Some good players back there in the secondary. Jonathan Rose coming back, going to be really motivated coming off of his injury. And I'm just really excited to see how they play this year. And I think they will upset the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in the West Final and advance on to the Grey Cup. Now that sets up a Grey Cup between the Edmonton Elks and the Hamilton Tiger Cats. And I know what Hamilton Tiger Cats fans don't want to hear it, and I'm a Tiger Cats fan myself, I should know, but I have them losing again in the Grey Cup, sorry to say. I think Edmonton is a team of faith this year. I think the quarterback position in this matchup favors Edmonton. I think Harris is a better player at his higher end than Mazzoli is, or Evans if he's the one that's starting by this point in the season. I just think they have a lot of advantages. I think Kwaku Boateng is going to be really hard for them to block consistently on the edge. I think Hamilton's tackles, Chris Van Zyl is a great player, but he's getting up there a lot in age. He's struggling with a thumb issue, I believe, is showing on the injury report right now. And they also have really big inexperience at left tackle. I think on the edge, having those problems is not a good recipe against this Edmonton team that has a really good defensive line, has some playmakers back there in the defensive back room as well. But mostly it's this offense that's just so explosive with all these weapons. Darrell Walker, Greg Ellingson, arguably going to be the best receiving duo in the CFL this season, in my opinion. And that's why I have the Edmonton Elks as your 2021 Grey Cup champions. But you'll have to let me know what you think down in the comments section. Who's going to win the Grey Cup this season? Let me know. And with that said, that is going to be the end of today's video. If you want to support the show, the best way to do it is by hitting that like button, and subscribing to Hussey's Huddle for more CFL content just like this. I appreciate all the support, guys. Once again, thank you for all the support on the roster review series. It means a lot to me. And I'm just really excited to get going with this season. I'm going to be doing a power rankings video next week, so look out for that. And with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Peace!